News!
Okay, we'll start with this. The sights and sounds of what was Matchroom's press conference for their revenge tour, Alicia Baumgartner's revenge tour against Christina Lenardattu. Alicia, who said, "I'm coming for destruction. Even though I'm undisputed champion, I still have that dog in me. I'm ready to put these hands on her and get that win back." To which Christina Lenardattu replied, "I've beat her before, and I'll beat her again."
She was always hugging. "I'm not afraid of her power," referring to the clinching in the first fight.
I am expecting a different outcome in the second. Some years have passed, and we've spent enough time talking about how Alicia Baumgardner has improved and rounded out as a fighter, now an undisputed champion. The stylistic matchup, we've spent some time on that.
Styles make fights.
Alicia, she's a very spry 29 years old. She's peaking. She's in her physical prime, whereas Christina, she is some years older, about 5 or 6, at 35, now a mom.
And in the last 3 years, Christina has only fought 2 times. You heard that right. 2 fights in the last 3 years. It's been approximately a year's time since she last saw action, the Priskavi Kot fight.
Her first fight since giving birth. This contest with Alicia is a super featherweight contest, you understand. It's down there at 130 pounds. A weight that Christina Lenardattu has not had to make in some years.
About 5.
Let's get it straight. Christina Lenardattu has spent the vast majority of her career fighting well above 130 pounds, well above super featherweight. The last time she made a contracted weight of 130 pounds was about 5 years ago when she fought Alicia.
For the first time.
All things considered, for a 35-year-old woman, it's a long time ago.
You think about Christina's base style, which we've often talked about, that she's a come-forward, aggressive pressure fighter, a physical fighter, an explosive one.
I'd wager that this weekend it might be somewhat hard for her to stay in character, to stay that explosive mid-range to inside puncher, mid-range to inside hooker.
There is Alicia Baumgartner's growth as a fighter to be addressed, but there are also the intangibles.
You're talking about a 35-year-old woman making a weight that she hasn't made
In 5 years.
and how physically taxing that cut must have been. The silver lining for Christina is that she was scheduled to fight Michaela Mayer at a contracted weight of 135 pounds. That fight having fallen apart.
She was already on her way down. In recent years,
Recent memory, most of Christina's fights have been fought at 140 pounds, where she reigned as a 2-time WBO champion.
she's 10 pounds lighter now where she's trying to be.
I don't imagine it's been an easy road to get there. For a physical fighter, an explosive fighter, trying to make that weight for Christina, she may have ended up leaving something back there, leaving something in the gym. I imagine that she's going to be second best this weekend.
I still like the fight, and I still think that Christina, in spite of the intangibles, she can still make things interesting in spots because she's a ferocious fighter.
With a fan-friendly style. But this weekend, I do anticipate that she will be second best. She'll be second best at every turn opposite the ring, Alicia Baumgardner, who's more seasoned and much sharper than she was when they first met.
The gradual decay of time, chance, and circumstance, they all have a role to play in this weekend's contest.
Funny old game, this boxing. When they first met, Alicia Baumgardner was very young and very green, inexperienced.
Experience is what won Christina Lenardattu the fight against Alicia Baumgartner. Now, here today, some years later, it's experience that's working against her.
Too much of it.
I anticipate she's always going to be one step behind Alicia in this weekend's contest. She'll always be one step behind the fresher, younger fighter who's peaking.
She was only 30 years old, only 30, when she gave Alicia her first professional loss. But there is a difference between 30 and 35. Just ask around.
So I maintain my original position. I think that Alicia Baumgartner will avenge the loss to Christina Lenardattu this weekend. Moreover, I actually think she might stop her.
Alicia's not your run-of-the-mill pure boxer. Your run-of-the-mill pure boxer doesn't always generate as much power as what you see with Alicia Baumgardner. Pure boxers, customarily fighting on the balls of their feet, on their toes, they don't always sit on their punches, whereas Alicia, she generates devastating power, knockout power, even on the fly.
That's what sets her apart.
I think this weekend's fight is going to be an entertaining fight for however long it lasts, but there's a legitimate chance that Alicia Baumgardner don't just win, she wins by way of knockout. We'll see what happens.
Think you and Oscar are going to be able to work out the fight with Munguia?
Yeah, it's down to DAZN. I mean, DAZN have told us we want to make Berlanga against Munguia. Frank Smith had a meeting with Eric Gomez in Los Angeles to talk about that fight. they're up for the fight, and so is DAZN. So I spoke to Keith Connolly. We're going to be putting an offer to Edgar Berlanga for that fight. I guess they'll put an offer to Munguia, and let's see if we can make it happen.
One aspect of this potential fight that you have to factor into the equation is pressure from the platform, the broadcast partner themselves, DAZN. Golden Boy Promotions and Zenfer, who both promote Jaime Munguia, may have their reservations about how those negotiations are supposed to go.
Fernando Beltran, president of Zenfer, is insistent that if they go into a fight with Edgar, Jaime's got to be the A-side.
It's a potential obstacle, but DAZN have instructed Matchroom to make Munguia versus Berlanga next. Matchroom and Golden Boy Promotions reps met in LA to discuss the matchup, and Eddie Hearn is confident of making the fight, expects to make an offer soon. Puerto Rican star Edgar Berlanga and Mexico's own Jaime Munguia have been linked together with a fan-friendly 168-pound clash, the best that can be made on DAZN in the absence of Canelo Alvarez. Munguia and Berlanga seem a natural pair. They share the same age, 26. They are in each other's weight class. They are both coming off 12-round thrillers, and
they're both on the same schedule, fighting on the same platform,
exhibiting a classic Mexico versus Puerto Rico matchup, and one is a big ticket seller on the East Coast, with the other also selling well in the West. Both are gifted punchers, and both are in need of a signature victory. Long has Munguia been kept fighting a lower level of competition, despite being a former world champion at 154. A step up in notable contest for him has been in demand from fans for a long time. Golden Boy seems to be playing the long game, and that's even if they have a plan at all.
Is Edgar Berlanga really a step up in class for Jaime? They might both be 26 years old, but Jaime's got a lot more pro experience, a lot more fights than Edgar does, and he is a former world champion.
I mean, don't confuse this being a high-profile fight with a step up in class for Jaime. It's a step up for Edgar.
But I don't know that we can say that for Jaime.
If DAZN is interested in the next generation, Munguia versus Berlanga is a fight that'll get people talking, and indeed a fight that would undoubtedly create a new major player in the same division that Canelo himself still resides in.
I still have my reservations. I still approach this fight with some skepticism as to whether or not they'll get it over the line before this year is out.
Though what helps the situation is pressure from the platform. The broadcast partner themselves are pushing for this fight, and that should, at least in theory, help it along. Of course, as always in boxing, there is at least one significant hurdle. While Munguia's promoter, Oscar De La Hoya, might be in the middle of his lawsuit with Ryan Garcia, the former 6th Division champion turned matchmaker has found enough time recently to reignite his strange feud with Berlanga's promoter, Eddie Hearn. A fight between two young 168-pound contenders who reside on the same network and are both in need of a big fight should not be hard to put together. Matchups such as Munguia versus Berlanga have enough sex appeal to inject some adrenaline into the DAZN schedule at a time when their two major stateside stars appear to be on the way out. Indeed, one of them is long gone.
That's Canelo.
So look at it this way. Oscar De La Hoya's ongoing feud, however peculiar it might be, his feud with Eddie Hearn, that could be a stumbling block, though at the same time, Eddie Hearn himself stated he doesn't have to deal with Oscar. It's actually Eric Gomez who he sat down with.
And DAZN wants the fight. They're pushing for it.
Those are the pros. Here are the cons. Golden Boy Promotions isn't the only promoter that promotes Jaime Munguia. There is also Zenfer Promotions, south of the border. Zenfer that is helmed by Fernando Beltran, who was insistent that if Jaime's going to go into a fight with Edgar Berlanga or anybody else not named Canelo Alvarez, if he's going to do that, he's got to be the A-side.
Those are the cons.
Can they make the numbers work? Can they make the numbers work to where both teams are satisfied? Those are the cons. Back to the pros. Without Canelo Alvarez there on the DAZN platform and all the money it takes to make one of his fights,
you know, all the money that they would have poured into making a Canelo Alvarez fight, they can now use some of that money to make this one, because this fight don't cost nowhere near as much as it costs to pay Canelo Alvarez.
It's the silver lining. That's the saving grace. Eddie Hearn touched on that when addressing Canelo's departure from the platform, that now that big pool of money they would have used to make a Canelo fight, they can use that to make several other fights, perhaps this one included.
We'll see.
Now, aside from whatever Canelo Alvarez is doing and whoever Canelo Alvarez is fighting, this fight would be the most high-profile fight at 168 pounds. You heard that right. This fight between Edgar and Jaime, this Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalry, would have more of a profile, more even than the Benavidez versus Plant fight did.
That fight didn't do astronomical numbers.
It didn't. And that was the most high-profile fight of David Benavidez's career.
Coming in after Canelo Alvarez and decisioning Caleb Plant did not do for David what Samson Lukowicz thought it would do for David.
It didn't. Did he think that was going to be the launch pad that launches David Benavidez into the next stratosphere? It seems that he's lost some steam, lost some momentum after he blew off the idea that he'd be fighting David Morrell in the fall.
I mean, what's the plan for him now? Is he even going to fight again this year?
Now, that's not saying that there haven't been great fights and solid fights at 168 pounds. I mean, for me and my money, Mabili versus Gongora was a great fight. A better fight even than Benavidez versus Plant. More dramatic, more ebbs and flows.
Been some decent fights already at 168, but this fight between Edgar and Jaime would still have more of a profile than any of those fights. Think Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia.
It's kind of like that, to where Ryan Garcia wasn't necessarily a step up in competition for Gervonta Davis, but he was a more popular fighter than anybody Gervonta had fought so far, and that significantly increased the profile of the fight.
That applies here. Edgar is not necessarily a step up in class for Jaime Munguia. I mean, could Edgar Berlanga have beat the Sergey Didivianchenko that Jaime fought?
That Sergey fought with inspiration, and what about Gabriel Rosado? Could Edgar Berlanga have beaten the version of Gabe that Jaime Munguia fought? Gabe gave him a decent fight.
I don't know that we can say that Edgar is a step up in class, a step up in competition for Jaime, but what we can say is that he's more popular than anybody Jaime has fought so far.
If anybody's stepping up in class here, it's Edgar, not Jaime.
This is a step up for him.
Yeah. What you mean I'm scared, bro? I ain't scared of nobody. The only person I'm scared is the man up above. You want to talk about money? You want to talk about respect? Are you going to blow my brains out? Bro, you're going to have diarrhea before you step into that ring. But let's make this shit happen. Working hard. I'm trying to get this. I'm trying to humble your ass down, man. Let's just be fair, bro. Let's be reasonable. Let's tell Al Haymon to cut the check, and let's show everybody what we're about. I'm here to win, baby. It's not about the money. I'm here to fucking win. Become champion again. Let's get it. But remember, you're gonna have diarrhea before you step into that ring. Tanya, chorro, de miedo. Vámonos.
Hey, Andy. Bro, we don't have to keep doing all this back and forth. You know that, right? I think you're stalling a little bit or something. But, bro, hey, put that pen to that paper. Sign that contract. That's all you got to do. Nothing else. Ain't no need of we going back and forth doing all this talking, man, on this social media. I'm about business, and I want action to happen. So the faster you can sign that paper, the quicker I can give you this knockout, bro. I don't even believe nothing you saying. Look at all them glitches in your video. You edited that motherfucker like a mud.
These two have been going back and forth like this by way of video messages on social media for at least the last 24 hours. I couldn't be bothered to address it the first time, but in Andy's video, there was an interesting tidbit. Aside from his threat to give Deontay Wilder diarrhea, and I don't know how he means to do that, he did mention Al Haymon, and that gives us insight into who's bankrolling all of this. Is Al Haymon still a part of Deontay Wilder's career moving forward? And it appears that he is, at least for this fight, that when it comes to this fight,
Al is involved.
I don't know what, if anything, Al Haymon has to do with the proposed Deontay Wilder-Anthony Joshua showdown set to go down later on this year, and we all know who's bankrolling that. The Saudis are bankrolling that, and I don't know what Al Haymon's role is when it comes to that, but when it comes to this This would be a PBC show, likely aired as a pay-per-view on Showtime, the PBC's only remaining broadcast partner. We know they're not with Fox anymore.
In any event, these guys have been going back and forth like this for at least the last 24 hours, approximately 4 video uploads between them.
Questionable who needs this fight more. Does Deontay need it? Does Andy need it? Because Deontay does have a far more lucrative option, a far more lucrative fight he can be in later on this year. Does he really need this one? Does he really need Andy? It's not like Andy is adequate preparation for an Anthony Joshua fight, because in spite of Andy being a common opponent between them, if Wilder actually fights him, between Wilder and Anthony Joshua, he's not built like Anthony Joshua, doesn't fight like Anthony Joshua.
So is he really preparation for him en route to that fight?
I mean, I feel like Wilder has more leverage in these negotiations because he, unlike Andy, has a lucrative option, a lucrative alternative. Whereas Andy, if he don't fight Wilder, who does he fight?
I feel like Wilder's got leverage. Perhaps Andy needs this fight more than Wilder, but perhaps to some degree Wilder needs it too, because he will have only fought for all of one round, just one round, in the last 12 months.
That to some degree Wilder might need this fight. Well, not so much this fight, but a fight, any fight, en route to the Joshua fight. He doesn't need the fight more than Andy, but that doesn't mean he doesn't need to fight.
Still wonder if this fight jeopardizes the Anthony Joshua fight, if it turns out to be more of a fight than Wilder and his team anticipate.
I mean, what they figure is they've got height on Andy, reach on Andy, and power, that Andy's got slow feet, so landing the big right hand shouldn't be too hard.
It's likely what they figure.
You know, Andy Ruiz, he's been underestimated before, and he's beaten the odds before. Could he beat the odds with Deontay Wilder? That's contingent upon Andy slipping the straight punches of Deontay Wilder, slipping and hooking, evading and countering. He's got hand speed, but he's got slow feet.
Can he get inside? I think if he can do damage. He can hurt Deontay Wilder. After all these months, we really don't know where Wilder's punch resistance is, because his last fight only lasted 1 round.
That can't be good for his cardio, and his punch resistance is in the air after those 2 systematic beatings at the hands of Tyson Fury.
We don't know where he's really at.
This is an intriguing fight. It's intriguing unto itself, and if they can make it, I'd buy it.
But they're at odds over the money.
And the clock is ticking. I feel like Wilder's priority is the Joshua fight later on this year or early next year. I mean, that's where he stands to make the most cash. This is just the pit stop.
It's optional.